Imagine how unremarkable it must have felt on the morning of August 3rd. Such an ordinary start to a Saturday in El Paso. Shoppers were packed inside this Walmart, buying groceries and back-to-school supplies. That's how it felt on a recent Saturday morning. All that normalcy now tempts us to forget what happened here when evil darkened this store. It's been a year since the horrific attack on the Cielo Vista Walmart. A year since a gunman went on a rampage that resulted in 23 deaths and dozens of injuries. Lives were shattered that day. A sense of innocence was lost. And as for the people who survived and the people who endured terrible loss, they're left to shoulder the burden of that dark day. Some have chosen to tell their stories. We dedicate this special report to the memories of the victims and to those who are still staying El Paso strong. In central El Paso, in a cinder block building sandwiched between I-10 and Paisano, Gilbert Anchondo is talking about his son, Andre.
I have stuff that belonged to him because he used to be a drummer too.
Gilbert takes me on a tour through the trophies and toys that line every countertop, every shelf.
He made this for me, that he was leaving handprints on the wall.
He shows me this handprint, made when Andre was a child.
And this is a reminder of something that he was going to leave me forever.
At the entrance to Gilbert's body shop, he's built a shrine dedicated to his son and his daughter-in-law, Jordan. Both of them shot to death on August 3rd.
I think to myself, when he and she found out that there was somebody shooting, and the shooter was in front of Andre, that's a scary situation. So I can picture his face. So you see, constantly, I try to feel that he was angry, afraid, and he was worried about his son and Jordan.
For the victims of August 3rd, there are so many tragic details and circumstances, but the story of Jordan and Andre gained particular prominence in the national media, due largely to their newborn son, who was injured but survived.
And he's beautiful, and he looks like mom, but again, he's more like Andre.
The little boy was orphaned that day, his parents murdered, while trying to shield him from an unrelenting barrage of bullets.
I'm constantly with the pain. You know, like my insides in the morning, that I was describing, they turn into nuts, that I feel like screaming, I feel like crying, I feel everything together.
That sense of frustration is part of what motivated Albert Hernandez to write this book. It's called El Paso's Darkest Day. It's dedicated to his sister Maribel and her husband Leo, who were both killed on August 3rd.
It was a clear, beautiful day. Saturday, it was, the Walmart was full to the brim that day.
In the backyard of his home in northeast El Paso, Albert tells me how that tragic Saturday started to take shape.
When I go to look at the phone, then I see active shooter, and I'm going, that's where it all started. I was an active shooter in El Paso. What's going on here?
Albert says his mother alerted him to the fact that Maribel and Leo had not returned to the dog groomer to pick up their dog. Then Maribel's son tracked her phone. It was inside the Walmart.
So the first thing we did, we ran to the hospital searching. We did a search team. And we were thinking maybe she dropped the phone and she ran out.
Eventually, the Hernandez family went from hospitals to what police were calling a family reunification center at MacArthur Elementary.
Tell me what it was like inside that reunification center. And what was it like emotionally with the other families there? Could you sense
A lot of them were worried. A lot of them had a lot of hope, including our family. There was hope that they maybe were witnesses that had dropped phones, or maybe they were in hospitals. But at one moment, we all came to the conclusion that was not what's going on. We were the victims, and when we found out, people began to start crying in the building, because they knew that was us.
Maribel Hernandez and Leo Campos had been married for 16 years. Albert says they were inseparable. And after seeing cell phone video from a survivor, Albert believes that Leo was trying to shield Maribel.
It's very true, that's the way they were. They were a very loving couple. It's ironic that they died together, it's very ironic, but they were a very loving couple, and they did everything together. And back again, I know Leo would have done that for her.
Maribel had 4 children who were robbed of their mother that day.
You need to stop and think that they had an extended family. And the saddest thing for us is that she left behind an extended family, and for them it's been very difficult.
And that's a big part of this story, the far-reaching impact of that cowardly act, the tentacles that extend into so many families, that extend across international borders.
There were 46 people shot, 23 died, but there were 46. And sometimes I think we get caught up and forget that there was a whole lot more to this than meets the eye.
El Paso Mayor Dee Margo was at a board meeting in Austin when the shots rang out. He was told that there had been a shooting in El Paso, but the details were not clear. He quickly boarded a plane and returned home.
So I boarded the plane, and for an hour and a half, I had no contact with anybody. The plane did not have internet capability, so all I remember doing was looking out the window and praying, because I couldn't think of anything else to do.
By the time he landed in El Paso, the severity of the crime had come into focus. Margo went to the reunification center where families were waiting.
And I went in to say hello to them. I could hardly talk. But it was tough. They're just waiting for official word. And knowing that the chances of their loved ones surviving were probably very slim.
The estimates of the shoppers at Walmart were between 1,000 and 3,000 with 100 employees present.
In the parking lot of the Walmart, it was pure chaos. Confused customers, wounded shoppers, and first responders arriving at the most heart-wrenching crime scene of their careers.
Dispatchers were on top of it. They were dispatching units. Within minutes, we had first responders on the scene. Law enforcement was gaining entry. Fire and medical crews were transporting and triaging patients and working as rapidly as they could. But it's one of those things, like I said, you train for it, you prepare for it, but you're never truly prepared.
El Paso Fire Chief Mario De Agostino says police and fire and paramedics performed heroically.
We had state and federal law enforcement on the scene as well, but El Paso Police and El Paso Fire, I mean, a tremendous job they performed that day. I mean, they faced a scene that no one imagines, you know, and they did their job and they stayed tight and they worked through it. It takes a toll. It takes a toll on all the departments, and so we've been providing as much help as we can.
We heard shots ring out. My husband asked me if it was a shooter. I turned and looked. People were saying that there was a shooter, and I took off and said, yes, there's a shooter, we need to go.
The first 911 calls from Walmart were made at about 10:30 a.m. Half an hour later, the suspect was arrested right down the street from the crime scene. According to investigators, he walked up to an officer and surrendered, and it didn't take long for a motive to surface.
They gave me a copy of the manifesto that was written by this evil white supremacist. And I read that and I thought, I can't believe this.
Minutes before the shooting, investigators say the suspect posted a racist, anti-immigrant rant to the online message board 8chan. He had driven to El Paso from his home near Dallas to kill Hispanics. to stop what he described as an invasion.
He confessed to doing it because he wanted to slaughter Mexicans, Hispanics, immigrants. We have a long way to go in America, a lot of soul searching that we still need to do, and we have to confront people who are not with us. Confront them with the facts, confront them with love, but confront them with change.
El Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar was holding a town hall at a local high school when she got word of the attack. Looking back now, she takes note of how much has changed in the years since the shooting.
Since that year, we have reached a tipping point on racism in our institutions. We witnessed the brutal murder of George Floyd, and that provided a momentum for people all over the globe, not just Americans, to demand change and to recognize the corrosive brutality of racism.
All I want to do is find my mom. Somebody needs to tell me where she is. I want to know if she's dead or alive or if she's still in Walmart.
For the people who were inside the Walmart that day, the racial hatred that inspired the violence continues to take a heavy toll.
Do you hate this guy?
Yes. He's changed my life forever.
Gilbert Serna was working at the Cielo Vista Walmart on the morning of August 3rd. He was near the back of the store when he heard his manager sound an alarm, a code brown.
At first, you really don't hear code brown. It's super rare. Acts of violence, and don't hear code brown often. As soon as they click to it, the act of violence, that's when we first heard the gunshot. We heard a gunshot go off.
Gilbert helped save lives that day. He called out to customers and helped lead them out the back of the store, past the storeroom, and out of harm's way.
Active shooter, and I'm going through every aisle, and I'm like, active shooter, follow me, and we ran out the back door.
Amidst the chaos, Gilbert continued to help, sheltering customers in a shipping container, helping others run towards safety.
There were 3 kids that were trying to jump over a retaining wall, and I lifted them over the wall. There was an estimated 100 employees working that day, and they all have an amazing story. Each associate saved 1 life that day.
Those are my heroes, those who dropped everything to help those in need. We heard so many stories about kids who were ushered to safety by employees at the Walmart.
Former Congressman Beto O'Rourke was in the middle of a presidential campaign on August 3rd, 2019. When the news broke, he left a candidates forum in Las Vegas and returned home to El Paso, where he met with victims and their families.
My wife met me at the airport, and we drove over and met Chris's mom, this beautiful woman named Rosemary Vega, who was in an ICU bed with gunshot wounds to her abdomen, with every manner of tube connected to her body to help her breathe, to help her live. And this is very much an El Paso thing. She took such pains in the midst of her suffering to welcome me to her hospital room, though she could barely speak, to offer to hug me, although she couldn't really lift her arms, and to make sure that I felt at home with her when she was fighting for her life. But here's the thing, Robert, not only was she shot, her mother was shot, her aunt was shot, who died of her wounds soon thereafter.
From the start, O'Rourke has drawn a straight line between the gunman's motives and the language used by President Trump.
The President of the United States, Donald Trump, he describes asylum seekers as an infestation. He calls them animals. He puts their kids in cages after separating them from their parents. All of these signals were picked up by that gunman, who in the manifesto that he published just prior to walking into that Walmart with that AK-47, echoed and referenced the president's own words.
Trump for 2020!
But the president's supporters in El Paso say O'Rourke is wrong. These Trump supporters showed up at one of O'Rourke's appearances during a protest in Clinton last summer.
There's a legal way to come into this country, and there is an illegal way.
They defend the president and his immigration policies.
Whatever Trump's going to do, these people are not going to go for it. So I'm here supporting my president. I think he's doing the best he can. Like, he wants to secure the borders. He says, putting up the fence would help, and it would. I mean, it's not going to stop everything, but it's going to control the flow of people coming in.
This is Officer Ryan.
On August 7th, President Trump came to El Paso. He and the First Lady met with first responders. They met with victims at University Medical Center. He spoke briefly, alluding to the possibility of new gun control legislation that never materialized.
We went to the hospital, just came from the hospital. We were there a lot longer than we were anticipated to be. It was supposed to be just a fairly quick. We met with numerous people. We met with also the doctors, the nurses, the medical staff. They have done an incredible job. Both places, just incredible. And the enthusiasm, the love, the respect, and also the telling me, let's see if we can get something done. And Republicans want to do it, and Democrats want to do it.
In March of this year, Beto O'Rourke suspended his presidential campaign and joined other Democratic candidates who coalesced behind former Vice President Joe Biden. He says he still draws strength and inspiration from the community's reaction to August 3rd.
I just count myself so lucky to be an El Pasoan, and as a fellow citizen in this community, I understand that it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that there's justice for every single one of the 23 people killed in that Walmart, every family that is still grieving and will never fully be able to compensate for the loss that they've experienced.
For some, the justice they seek will come down to the criminal case against the 22-year-old suspect.
I don't know if you can ever really be prepared for this.
Yvonne Rosales is in the process of closing down her private law practice in central El Paso. She made history recently when she was elected to serve as El Paso's first female district attorney. She'll be taking over the state's criminal case against the suspect, seen here smirking in October of last year when he entered a plea of not guilty to charges of capital murder.
But we need to take a step back and deal with this case very delicately, because we're dealing with human emotions, we're dealing with horrific pieces of evidence.
Currently, the suspect is being tried as a mass murderer in state and federal court.
A lot of questions have been like, who's going to handle it first, the state or the federal government? Well, unfortunately, we can't really give a true definite answer to that because we're in this pandemic. So all jury trials have come to a halt.
Rosales admits it could be years before the accused gunman stands trial. Rosales will be taking over for longtime DA Jaime Esparza, who had said he would seek the death penalty. Rosales says any decision she makes moving forward will be based on her conversations with the victims and relatives.
I need the complete input of the families involved, because what we're forgetting is that it's not about just trying a case, it's about dealing with human emotions. These people have to relive that horrific day. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary. That's going to be psychologically very draining on them. Now what happens when you have to go into one trial and then potentially a second trial? Whoever goes first, whether it's the federal government or the state, the other side needs to think about what is this going to do to a family if they have to endure this process again.
A lot of survivors don't want to talk to reporters, and that's perfectly understandable. But a lot of survivors and relatives of victims can't talk to reporters because they're taking legal action against Walmart, alleging that the store didn't do enough to protect shoppers and employees on August 3rd.
We have information that says that as little as 3 years ago, before this incident, there was armed security at that Walmart, at that specific location, and there just wasn't any armed security that day.
Bryce Burris is an attorney with a Dallas-based law firm that's launched a pre-litigation investigation on behalf of 6 shooting victims.
I personally think that it is a cost-cutting implementation done by Walmart to save money and, in reality, to make money on a corporate level.
In response to the lawsuits, Walmart has said that safety is their top priority and that they care deeply about their associates and customers. They go on to say that the tragic event will be with them forever and that their hearts go out to the families that were impacted by the events of August 3rd.
We have filed a lawsuit against 8chan, the owners of 8chan.
Rather than going after Walmart, El Paso attorney Jim Scher is representing victims who are suing the owners of the now defunct message board 8chan, where the killer's manifesto was posted.
We should not allow the destruction of our country by people who think that one nation only applies to white racists or bigots or people who think that they're above or better or categorize others.
In the days and weeks after the August 3rd shooting, El Paso stood in sharp contrast to the racial divisions outlined in the gunman's manifesto. There was a huge outpouring of love and unity in this community.
The whole nation was behind us here in El Paso. We got letters from all over the country.
People from all over the world stood in support of El Paso. That message, a community united, helped mitigate the pain that so many were struggling to contain.
It's amazing and so wonderful that we know that people are there sharing that same pain that we feel.
The response gave rise to the slogan El Paso Strong, the word combination that's been used in other communities victimized by violence.
I saw the Paso Strong in everybody. I saw the random acts of kindness.
We all have our little moments of silence where we think about, oh my God, what a terrible day that was. But we overcame that. You know, the El Paso Strong was real. You know, we heard that from Vegas, we heard it in other places, but I thought we really lived it.
Dr. Alan Tyrock is the chair of surgery at Texas Tech El Paso and the chief of surgery at University Medical Center, where several of the most gravely wounded were treated.
I see a lot of death. We all do as surgeons and physicians. I mean, we have about 120 people die a year in our trauma program, and most we can't do much about because they're lethal injuries. But stuff like this is not like those. So it will never leave us. It'll be part of us.
When it came to final farewells, the victims' families didn't have to pay for the funerals. A local nonprofit called Operation Hope helped coordinate with several local funeral homes to cover the costs of the burials.
To be honest with you, we were doing our backpack giveaway that we do every year. We were at Memorial Park with the Sheriff's Department. When all of a sudden, about halfway in, the sheriff started yelling, we gotta roll, and they took off.
Angel Gomez founded Operation Hope more than 20 years ago.
People ask me, how do you feel coming up to the first year anniversary of the Walmart shooting? And I said, well, you know, it just saddens me because we lost 23 souls, 23 brothers and sisters that we lost, you know, and it's sad, but we give everybody a beautiful homecoming, I should say.
So when Angel called me and says, Sal, you know, what can we do? What can you do? I go, I'm do whatever I can to help out our community. Right away, several funeral homes did the same.
Sal Perches is part owner of Perches Funeral Homes. He helped coordinate burials for victims on both sides of the border.
The first 3 cases went to Juarez and one to Chihuahua. We took care of the transfers for those families, for those victims. It hit me hard. I've been in this all of my life. I grew up in it. But what happened to our community and to our fellow, you know, people, several from Juarez and of course from here, it really got to me.
The overwhelming community response was front and center when Margie Record was laid to rest. Her husband, Antonio Bosco, invited the public to attend her services, and the response was overwhelming.
That's when I feel also that the community went also to mourn, because yes, all the other victims of course had their families, but when the family of Margie Record invited the community, over 4,000 people showed up. So I believe that that was the time I called, told everybody there and the other funeral directors when we took the flowers and everything, that day, that's when El Paso mourned also. And it wasn't just for Margie Record, it was for all the victims together.
Margie was the 22nd Walmart victim to be laid to rest. She was supposed to be the last. But the death toll climbed in April of this year. That's when Guillermo Memo Garcia died at Del Sol Medical Center, 8 months after being shot in the legs and spine.
I tell people over and over again that I don't think there will ever be a more perfect father, husband, or friend than him, because everything he did, he gave 150%.
Jessica Garcia was married to Memo for 12 years. They met as teenagers, and they had 2 children.
It's unbelievable because I guess I always expected to have a long road of recovery, and it was going to be hard, things were going to change, it was going to be different, but I envisioned us in 10 years being okay as a family and still being together.
The soccer coach had been selling lemonade with his family in front of the Walmart, hoping to raise money for his children's soccer team.
Over these 8.5 months, there was days that he would wake up and he would sing, or he would smile, or he would blow kisses and make funny faces. And I think he did it out of love. I think he held on a little bit more for our sake. Just to give us a little bit more of him.
On November 14th of last year, Walmart reopened the Cielo Vista location. Workers and customers returned to the store, which had been remodeled during the 3 months it was closed. Some in the community were deeply troubled by the store's reopening. Others felt otherwise.
I had pushed for the store to reopen like maybe hours after. We're not gonna let this attack. We're not gonna let this racist attack define our city. We're not gonna let them define who we are.
I actually talked to a couple that works there that actually saw the whole horrific scene. But they said, this is our job. We need to work.
In front of the Cielo Vista Walmart, the company built this permanent memorial, this steel cylinder that's called the Grand Candela. It stands 30 feet tall. The lights inside designed to honor each of the victims.
I don't want the victims forgotten. I don't want them I don't want any, I want people to understand what violence can do. But I believe we can do that. I think the Candela that Walmart did was pretty spectacular. I mean, after having attended all the funerals that Adair and I attended, and looking at those candles, at every one of them, I thought, gee, that is just a perfect remembrance of who we are and our culture and how we do things.
In the months leading up to the August 3rd anniversary, a virus changed everything. The ongoing global pandemic has left little room for remembrances or even reflection.
And how do we, what do we do about that? Do we ignore it or do we address it?
El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego says the coronavirus is keeping us from coming together in a time of need.
This is a community that went through a huge bereavement process that was truncated in less than 7-8 months. About seven months it was truncated, and then we sort of put it aside. Should we incorporate that? We're a grieving community dealing with a pandemic.
I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to be reliving this again, but we're doing it in such a different world with this virtual event that we have, all the stuff we do.
Yeah.
Different. It really is.
It is.
Not healthy.
I'm sorry?
It's not healthy, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't, I suppose, like it denies us the sense of community, right? I mean,
you need that humanity. You can only do so much on a video or a phone call.
At Ascarate Park, El Paso County is building a memorial garden to honor the 23 victims. At Ponder Park, right down the street from the Cielo Vista Walmart, a temporary memorial has deteriorated under the El Paso sun. Only a handful of photos and signs still remain. The massive makeshift memorial that once lined the back of the Walmart is gone. Those items are now being stored by the city.
That's at the History Museum and will be preserved as a part of a permanent exhibit.
Included in those preserved items, these iconic white crosses made by a carpenter from Illinois.
I don't know if you know the routine, but I'm Greg Zanis, that's G-R-E-G.
Greg Zanis spent 25 years traveling the country making these crosses for victims of mass shootings.
This is the 21,000th time that I've done this in America.
From El Paso, he went directly to Dayton, Ohio, for a mass shooting on August 4th that left 9 dead.
I'm doing it so the family members can be remembering their loss, their loved one, in a very dignified way, like nobody else does. So when I do this, it's for each one, but today this becomes the family of El Paso.
Sadly, Zanis died in May of this year after a battle with bladder cancer.
You're not going to let this define you. Like, you know, it's not going to change anything. We're going to win 10,000 times over with 10,000 people that are going to come down here and show love. So that's why I'm doing it, because it brings it out.
For those who are still struggling with the aftermath of August 3rd, the 1-year anniversary is a complicated, difficult, and emotional event.
I am afraid that in our community this might be forgotten. You know, so I beg of every single people that might see this, that they don't forget us, that they don't forget those people that went into Walmart to have fun and came out injured or did not come out at all.
And I know a lot of people talk about how it's gone away, that it's Paso Strong, but I want people to remember that the day after or the hours after, I want them to treat it like, I want it to be August 4th every day, because that's when the hate stopped and we all came together.
So how do we keep El Paso strong from becoming an empty, hollow slogan? For some, it's about eliminating hate. Others say it starts with banning assault weapons.
It's not enough, although it was important, to take care of the victims and their families. And I'm so proud of the way that this community has rallied to their side. But we must do more. And I'm confident that we will, but we cannot lose sight of that, not ever.
And people will say, well, it's gun control. This is number one, and I would say this in behalf of Leo and Maribel, I would say, disarm hate first. You need to cure your heart.
We need to value human life. We need to value other members of this community. And even though we have our differences and our different viewpoints, our different ways of living, in the end, we need to understand and respect each other and just know that when things are difficult, we will come together.
Look at all the stuff that's going on with guns. It hasn't changed any. Look at the shooting that just happened a couple of days ago in Austin. And we need to come together as a nation, as a state first, then as a nation, and help bring down the gun violence that's going on in our community.
Ultimately, it is up to the people to elect representatives who will fulfill their values and who will be emblematic of their values, who will fight for their values. And I believe El Paso's values are about making sure that kids can go to school and that families can go to a Walmart without fear of being slaughtered by a gunman.
As for the accused gunman, his days and nights are spent here, behind bars, alone, isolated, weeks melting into months.
The perpetrator, the evildoer, is in jail. Whether he goes to death row or whether he doesn't, he's already condemned. And I want to explain to the general public that he is in what we call in a living hell. He is in a small cell, 23 and a half hours a day. He can't go nowhere. He is always watched. He is escorted to the shower. He can't be around other inmates.
How do you not hate this guy?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Here's the situation. If you have hate in your heart, he's won. He's won. He's not going to do that to us.
On forgiveness, we have to forgive so we can be in good standing with God. I do forgive the person, but not the monster that was inside of him. That was the works of the devil.
And I've said from day one, I want that individual prosecuted to the full extent of our laws. And I want maximum punishment. Period.
And as for the nightmares, for many, they remain as vivid as they were a year ago.
I'm sure these people all had significant PTSD, but hopefully they've overcome that by now. Yeah. But they'll never fully overcome that.
But for some, the anxiety and the pain is starting to subside, slowly. And in that, there is reason for hope.
I had flashbacks and nightmares and PTSD, a lot of anxiety and stress, loss of sleep. And I had somebody reach out to me, and it was mid-November. I had somebody reach out to me and they told me, like, you're a hero. A lot of families are going to be celebrating Thanksgiving and Christmas together as a family because of you. And I think that changed. I think that changed me.
That changed something inside you?
Yeah.
What did it change, do you think?
That there were still families that got to enjoy their loved ones for the holidays.
Because of the actions you took?
Mm-hmm.
And that helped you be more at peace?
Yeah.
A sense of peace. Perhaps that's the best we can hope for. A sense of peace and a place in our hearts for the people who will never forget August 3rd. I'm Robert Holguin, reporting.